Hey, everybody. What the difference between NAFTA and USMCA is that the USMCA emphasizes a more stringent country of origin rules and labor protections. It incorporates new digital trade and intellectual property provisions, which NAFTA lacked. It was aiming to update trade practices for the modern industries. Why country of origin has become a major focus for imports in Mexico is with the rising production in Mexico. Accurately determining the country of origin is crucial for compliance under the USMCA's tighter standards, reducing risks like the tariff penalties and misclassification. How has the tax system in Mexico changed under the current president? Recent tax reforms emphasize stricter oversight on customs and import duties. It's aiming to prevent evasion and ensure fair competition. Some of the best practices for ensuring compliance in cross-border trade are including early verification of the country of origin and a harmonized tariff schedule codes, and conducting regular compliance checks and understanding specific USMCA provisions to streamline the trade operations and reduce risks. What have I learned about from this episode regarding compliance and cross-border trade is that there are practical steps in USMCA's compliance with the focus on the country of origin rules, adapting regulatory changes, and the best practices for efficient border cross trade. Thanks.
So for discussion two, what is the difference between NAFTA and the USMCA? The United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, the USMCA, replaced the North American Free Trade Agreement, the NAFTA, in 2020. While the two agreements share many similarities, there are some key differences between them, such as automotive industry changes, labor provisions, agricultural market access, intellectual property and digital trade, sunset clause, environmental protections. While the USMCA builds upon NAFTA's foundation, these changes aim to modernize North American trade relations and address concerns that arose during NAFTA's 26-year lifespan. Why has country of origin become a major focus for imports from Mexico? As companies shift production from China to Mexico, and in some cases only do final assembly or packaging in Mexico, that can impact COO. The rules of country of origin can be applied differently between USMCA and USTR regulations. How has the tax system in Mexico changed under the current president? So the current president changed the tax system and moved it under the military. So customs is now more robust and the impact felt by the importers and exporters has increased. The Mexican government wanted to exert more control to reduce tax evasion, smuggling, etc. Some of the best practices for ensuring compliance in cross-border trade include looking at the product's BOM, the COO of raw materials and components, confirming the HTS code, and doing all of this planning in advance of production. Some of the things that we'll learn about in this episode regarding compliance and cross-border trade is why defining the country of origin is important and how this is applied under different regulation agencies like the USTR and USMCA. What are the changes with the implementation of USMCA and under the current president of Mexico, and how are they felt in cross-border trade? And lastly, some best practices to make sure your company understands and can comply with regulations so that shipments cross the border with ease.
So first question is, what is the difference between NAFTA and USMCA? So basically, the United States Mexico Canada Agreement is an updated version of the NAFTA, or the North America Free Trade Agreement. What they were talking about in the podcast was that the implementation has been delayed with the USMCA. You know, the USA has like updated environmental standards. Intellectual property protections are updated, and obviously more digital trade is involved. Question two is why has the country of origin become a major focus for imports from Mexico? So the USMCA introduced more strict rules regarding the country of origin, and that's kind of caused not chaos, but it's made it more difficult to do trade. And basically what he said in the podcast was there's different companies have different definitions of the uh, country of origin, like the rules behind that. Question three, how has the tax system in Mexico changed under the current president? So Biden. Um, the compliance system has been made real strict, like I said before, which is affecting business operations for both countries. And yeah, that's one of the big ways that has affected the tax system has in fact affected trade. Number four, what are some best practices for ensuring compliance is cross-border trade? They're talking about just staying updated on changes and just having research their trade agreements. And five, what will you learn about in this episode regarding compliance and cross-border trade? And I said you learn that a lot of the rules are complicated and business can mix up these regulations, which will result in a cluster of problems on both sides. So this is kind of slowing down the process of trade from Mexico to the United States and so on. So